being the oldest, I was actually blessed. I got to see my parents when they didn't have two nickels to rub together. I got to see the struggle. So I just have a quick question here. If you were the firstborn child in your family, let me know in the comments down below if you think that that was a blessing or a curse, because I still think it was a blessing to see our parents when they were young, poor, and struggling taught us far more than it taught our younger siblings about how to get by in life. But let me know down below. What do you think? Well, one summer, I was about 13, and my father had just had an accident at work. He was up moving around, but he wasn't able to go back to work, and there was no such thing as compensation back then. Those employers, they really would screw a worker over. So we had almost nothing coming in. We didn't have a lot coming in to begin with, but we got by. Being the oldest in the family, I was there from the beginning, and I remember all of it. And I think being the oldest, I was actually blessed. I got to see my parents when they didn't have two nickels to rub together. I got to see the struggle. My one brother, the baby of the family, by the time he came, my father had already owned his own company for a while, and it really took off after he was born. So by the time his memory is, they always had money. He was the one that, when he was in high school, Dad bought him a Shelby Mustang, just so he could get to and from school. I had a $40 Ford Falcon. That's how I got to and from school. And then when that broke down, I got a 1958 Chevy Bel Air station wagon. You talk about a boat. That thing was built like a tank. Almost got me thrown in jail one time. That's another story. Totally innocent. I wasn't even in the car, but the car was parked in a legal parking spot, and a cop's nephew ran into it with his bike. Yeah. And the cop put me in cuffs for parking there. Yeah. Back then, if you grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, you were just not good enough. I don't know if a lot's changed or not, or if I just don't care anymore. I honestly think not caring is probably the best thing. But getting back to what I was talking about, yeah, being the oldest of the family, I got to see it all. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But I was about 12 years old one summer. The summer Dad couldn't work, but he could drive, and he for a while. And he could get around, he just couldn't lift anything, he couldn't do his job. And I made a short clip just the other day about my great grandpa Pete. He's actually my grandmother's stepfather. He saved the family during the Depression, and we were at my grandparents' house, and my father was lamenting that there's no money coming in and no way for him to go do anything, and it bothered him. Now, my grandpa Pete, he never said much. He just usually sat in the corner and quietly listened. It's kind of one of the ways I found out that usually the quietest man in a room is the smartest. Well, Grandpa Pete was having some soup, and he's listening to my dad, and without missing a slurp, he looks up and he said, "Produce. Go to Market Street in Chicago, buy the produce, go door to door around here and sell it." just what he did during the Depression in downtown Chicago. And at first, everybody in the room was like, well, Grandpa, it's not like that now. You can't do it. And my dad said, why not? Why didn't I think of this before? He said, when I was a kid, we had a produce man that came through the neighborhood. We had a guy that came around and sharpened knives, and they made a living. The rag picker would come and take all of our rags. So there's a market for it. Well, Dad had an old pickup truck. I believe it was a Chevy. I'm not sure. But it was very similar to the pickup truck on Sanford and Son. It was an old truck. But when I was a kid, it was not uncommon to see these old pickup trucks all over the highway. And sometimes they even drove on the highway. They weren't just scattered all over the highway. But really, back then, to drive an old truck like that was no big deal. So a few days later, school let out because my dad couldn't lift anything. But he had a 13 and an 11-year-old, and we could. Myself and my brother that's next to me, Bob. And that summer, we went door to door selling produce. My dad would drive the truck slowly down the center of the street. My brother and I would hit each side of the street, knocking on doors. And at first, to be honest, people were like, what? And the second week we went through that same block, people were saying, you know, I've been thinking about this. And we had a guy when I was a kid that came around. Let me see your produce. And so Dad would stop the truck, and the lady would walk down and look everything over, and she said, got some nice, I'll take some potatoes, and I'll take tomatoes, and every bit helped. And so by the third, fourth, fifth week, if the lady wasn't home, she would leave an envelope with a list and some money inside. That was back when even in some of the neighborhoods that now you can't even leave your car, you could leave money in an envelope and nobody bothered it. By midsummer, we had people leaving orders, and ladies were doing things like, well, you know, my church is having a function, and I'm going to need this many potatoes, I'm going to need this. And so we would sometimes swing by their house to drop off relatively good size orders. And in looking back on it, I just can't get it out of my head how many people honestly needed the produce we sold versus how many of them they could have bought that at the store. It was fine. But what they wanted was to help my dad out. A U.S. Army veteran that was hurt and couldn't support his family. But he could drive around with his two sons and support the family with the help of his two sons. But we helped Dad for the rest of that summer. And then life went back to abnormal because there was nothing normal about the life in my family. But I think I learned so much more being the oldest because I had the privilege of seeing my parents when they were young and had nothing and struggling with two small boys, struggling just to keep a roof over our heads and food in our belly. But they did. And then when the other kids came along, things were a little bit better. They didn't see the struggle as much. Then Dad started his business. It took off. A lot of hard work. And the baby of the family, he didn't struggle for anything. He never got to know that his parents were young and penniless and struggling. So he didn't think that he should have to. He never saw that. My brother Bob and I, we saw it. We lived it. Front row seat. So when life kicked us in the teeth, we got up and kept fighting because that's what we knew. We never expected life to be easy. Sometimes we never expected it to be so hard, but we knew life wasn't easy. We had it so much better than the younger ones did. At least that's the way I remember it. I hope you enjoyed this crazy story. And if you did, hit the like and share button if you want to. If not, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. Maybe I'll shave by then.